Blake Lively is in big trouble, and it's all because of her brother.
Meanwhile, Blake Lively's defunct lifestyle brand was so toxic and unprofessional.
Blake Lively is reportedly in a complete meltdown after her dear brother ruined Baldoni's lawsuit with his toxic attitude at his workplace.
When apparently your brother was sleeping with the employees.
Blake's former employees are shouting, "If hypocrisy were a lifestyle brand, Preserve would be thriving right now."
Former staffs called the company an absolute disaster.
It is funny that the woman who claimed eye contact was workplace misconduct is now scrambling to explain how her brother allegedly ran a weed-scented loft office. So, what is this story? For this, we all have to go in 2014, the year Blake Lively decided she was ready to bless the world with her artisanal vision.
Speaking to previous employees of Blake Lively from her lifestyle brand Preserve, which she was doing as a Gwyneth Paltrow's Goop, similar to what Meghan Markle's doing right now with As Ever.
I am talking about Preserve, an online marketplace that no one asked for, but apparently everyone should have needed. It was supposed to rival Gwyneth Paltrow's Goop, because what the world was clearly craving was another blonde actress hawking overpriced linen napkins and hand-whittled spoons made by hipsters in suspenders. But who doesn't want lifestyle advice from someone who's never worked retail a day in her life?
Preserve was meant to be Blake's answer to Gwyneth Paltrow's Goop, selling lifestyle things that we really don't need, typically.
And then, poof! Preserve evaporated in less than a year. A true Cinderella story. Except instead of glass slippers, we got the sob story of sexism and patriarchal thoughts. When the dream died, Lively didn't blame herself, or the idea that maybe, just maybe, no one wants to buy $70 salad tongs and directionless jewelry with ridiculous decorative rocks.
Anywho, unfortunately for Blakey, there wasn't much of a market for a lifestyle blog romanticizing the antebellum South, called Preserve.
She heroically blamed media sexism and launching too fast. Because yes, apparently, patriarchy is the reason no one wanted to buy overpriced and directionless products from a blonde, egotistical female.
Damn it, Eric got involved, and he became the leader of the company, essentially, along with...
But isn't it refreshing when celebrities blame feminism for their failed Etsy knockoffs? Now, if that wasn't already a plot twist worthy of a CW teen drama, Daily Mail swooped in with their popcorn-ready exposé. They interviewed 6 out of 8 former employees of Preserve, who revealed the company was less a whimsical fairy tale and more a corporate horror show.
Terrible complaints that are happening in your horrible lifestyle brand.
The place was allegedly soaked in mismanagement, confusion, and a toxicity level that could outmatch a Chernobyl reactor. They were quite critical of Blake Lively for accusing others of a toxic workplace when she is the master of making her employees' lives a hell.
Are deeply ironic, given that it was one of the most insane, toxic, emotionally draining, and disorganized environments.
But wait, did she do it alone, or did her brother also help her? Well, here we are going to delve into the saga of a chaotic and toxic family. Apparently, Blake Lively is not the only person in her family who doesn't have a brain, but an ego the size of an elephant. Her brother, Eric Lively, is much worse than her.
Galgal smoked pot, frequently let staff out of the cold when he overslept and forced them to work sitting on the floor for months.
The real puppeteer behind the curtain of Preserve was none other than her brother, Eric Lively, a man whose biggest qualification for running a company was, apparently, once acting in an episode of The L Word. Truly, the business acumen was dripping off him. Or maybe that was just the THC.
Eric was completely unqualified to run the company. One said there were a lot of ways in which employment was unprofessional. For many weeks or months, there were no desks.
But who needs an MBA when you've got a headshot and a bong, right? So here's how this revolutionary business operated. Not from a sleek New York office or a design-forward studio, but from Eric Lively's literal Manhattan apartment. Yes, folks, this visionary brand, meant to be the next Goop, was headquartered in a bachelor pad.
Preserve was run out of a Manhattan studio apartment owned by Blake's brother, Eric Lively.
Picture your most chaotic college roommate's living space. Throw in some distressed wood and broken dreams, and you're close. The office had no real furniture, no desks, no separation between work and sleep, and barely any Wi-Fi stability. So, what does it have? Well, just vibes, and not the good kind. Employees often sat on the floor to work. That's right, Blake Lively's startup treated its staff like bohemian squatters.
The Daily Mail spoke to 6 former employees who exposed the chaotic company, with some expressing outrage over the irony of the entitled actress's current claims against Baldoni.
But hey, who needs chairs when you have a yoga mat and the cold, hard truth under you? And speaking of cold, let's talk about how staff were regularly locked outside in winter while Eric Lively was still in bed. He'd sleep in, probably recovering from another all-night creative binge, while paid employees shivered outside waiting for the door to open. Nothing says leadership like turning your front door into a velvet rope.
Outside in the New York cold, shivering, waiting for work while he's laying in bed, smoking some...
But wasn't the startup's motto, preserve warmth, style, and humanity? Irony just called. It wants a raise. Eric wasn't just bad at logistics. He was also the kind of boss who treated professionalism like it was optional, like wearing pants to a Zoom meeting. Allegations from multiple employees paint a funhouse mirror of dysfunction. Eric allegedly smoked weed and drank alcohol during work hours.
Staff said the environment was frantic. Some people were working every single day, 20 hours a day, a crazy amount, not because there was work to be done, but because it was so dysfunctional and Eric...
Imagine editing product descriptions about ethically harvested beeswax candles while your boss is cracking open a beer at 11 a.m. on a Tuesday. Now add prescription pill use to the mix. This wasn't a workplace. It was a very unfunny remake of Wolf of Wall Street, but with more soy candles and fewer yachts. But nothing screams female empowerment lifestyle brand like a half-stoned man-child playing pretend in his bathrobe. Let's talk about mood swings, because Eric wasn't just under the influence, he was also emotionally volatile.
Eric, we were subjected to his moods and whims, and those were very dysregulated. There was anger. You had to walk on eggshells.
1 minute he's handing out tasks like a camp counselor at a craft table. The next, he's having meltdowns like a toddler denied screen time. Former employees said it felt like Eric was playing creative director, and that tracks, he didn't direct anything but confusion. His approach to management was reportedly a toxic combo of impulsive assignments and total disengagement. One staffer described it as chaos with a splash of arrogance.
We'll say, you need to put together a strategy and present it tomorrow. But then you show up for work and he's still asleep. One day they were...
But is it still method acting if your only character is unqualified burnout with delusions of relevance? And just when you thought this artisanal dumpster fire couldn't burn hotter, Eric adds a shocking factor to it, an office affair. Yep, our fearless leader, Eric, was allegedly having an extramarital relationship with an employee.
In addition to all these claims, 3 staff members also told the Daily Mail that Eric had an intimate relationship with one of his employees. Some were uncomfortable.
According to multiple sources, he was married at the time. Yes, he was a married man who was stalking an employee and trying to make her sleep with him. No doubt, it is a totally sexual predator attitude. This isn't just poor judgment. It's a walking HR lawsuit in the making. Not only did it warp the office dynamic, but it also turned an already dysfunctional workplace into a gossip-fueled pressure cooker. Within this chaotic and pressure cooker, professional boundaries were thrown out with the empty wine bottles. But don't worry. Nothing boosts morale like your boss turning the office into a soap opera with sexual tension and zero ethics. When you think it can't get any worse, Eric and Blake managed to prove you wrong.
The impression Blake left on me after I worked at Preserve is that she doesn't care, said an ex-employee.
Their small startup wasn't only suffering from an unprofessional environment, but also had the financial savvy of a half-eaten granola bar. While the Lively siblings were curating vibes and poetic Instagram captions, employees were living paycheck to paycheck when they even got paid.
We don't know her side. Paychecks were also a problem, surprise, surprise.
Multiple staff members reported delays in their already pitiful wages. Imagine pouring your soul into writing product descriptions for lavender-infused bone broth only to discover your bank account still emptier than Eric's leadership resume. But why pay employees when you can just offer them exposure and a floor to sit on? In one particularly dystopian twist, some staff were given no wages at all, and they couldn't even afford subway fare to get to work. That's right. In the magical land of Preserve, your reward for tolerating a chaotic, toxic workplace was the opportunity to go broke doing it. The Lively brand was selling rustic wellness while their employees were budgeting whether they could afford ramen or the train. I bet nothing screams authenticity like modern indentured servitude in a lifestyle startup costume. But don't worry, I'm sure the mason jar of air-purifying herbs made it emotionally worth it.
Paychecks were haphazard. Staff members were unable to afford subway fares to get to work. Blake had been juggling work, pregnancy with her first child. Sounds like something, huh? Always juggling those.
And it wasn't just late payments. It was no payments. Several workers said they never received compensation for their services at all. Graphic designers, writers, support staff ghosted harder than a bad Tinder date. One source even claimed this wasn't a fluke but a pattern, that Blake Lively had a habit of not paying people. Because when you're busy crafting whimsical essays about elderflower jam and ethical hand soap, who has time to pay the humans making it all happen?
Of the staff members. Also, they're saying that the paychecks.
But maybe those late checks were just part of the brand's artisanal charm. Slow, rustic, and totally unreliable. What do you think about it? Before answering the question, remember this wasn't some bootstrapped startup run out of desperation. This was Blake Lively's passion project, funded by someone with Hollywood money, designer gowns, and enough Vogue covers to wallpaper a loft. And yet, people were left unpaid, financially stranded, and emotionally drained. If the brand's entire ethos was nurturing creativity, then failing to provide a basic living wage makes it not just hypocritical, but borderline offensive. But hey, who needs cash when your boss once played Serena van der Woodson? That's basically currency, right?
She also said, my team of amazing people were coming to work and bleeding, sweating, and crying every day and loving it. I don't think they were loving it. I think they were crying. And
to make things even more absurd, while employees scrambled for gas money and unpaid invoices piled up, Preserve still managed to maintain its curated aesthetic of luxury meets folklore. The website had slow-motion videos of honey dripping from wooden spoons, editorials about soulful living, and poetic odes to fabric dye. Meanwhile, the people making all that dreamy content were drowning in stress, debt, and freezing their butts off outside Eric's locked apartment door. But it's okay. Blake probably lit a $100 candle in their honor. That counts as compensation, doesn't it? What's worse, when complaints about financial negligence surfaced, they were reportedly met with silence. Or worse, deflection. The people at the top didn't offer solutions, or even acknowledgement. Instead, the Lively PR machine kept spinning stories about rushed launches, media bullying, and spiritual growth. She wanted the world to pity Lively and support her lifestyle brand. Meanwhile, people who made the site run, designers, writers, coordinators, were left in the dust, some with no legal recourse because they didn't even have formal contracts. But sure, let's keep pretending the press was the villain. It's always the journalists who make you forget payroll. By the way, were only employees in hell with this chaotic atmosphere, or others too? Turns out, running a chaotic faux creative agency out of a Manhattan loft isn't just a nightmare for employees. It's also a one-way ticket to being the most hated tenant in the building. The neighbors of Eric were allegedly ready to riot. Among the deeply thrilled was none other than former NHL player Sean Avery, who, like the rest of the building's residents, didn't exactly love the round-the-clock noise, the non-stop parade of unpaid interns, the sexual, predatory attitude of the unprofessional boss, or the unmistakable scent of mid-grade weed wafting through the vents like some kind of failed incense ritual. But hey, why run a lifestyle brand if you're not also destroying someone else's lifestyle in the process?
staff blow whistle on drugs, affairs, and bed in the...
Apparently, Eric thought professionalism meant hosting photo shoots next to an unmade bed, while also using the space for staff meetings, cannabis breaks, flirting with employees, and spontaneous existential crises. The loft had zero boundaries. One minute it was a brainstorming zone. The next it was a fashion shoot, and by evening it was basically a Coachella after-party. Imagine showing up to work and being told to edit blog copy while someone's modeling burlap dresses 10 feet away from a mattress. I don't know about you, but if my boss hosted corporate strategy sessions between bong rips and bed sheets, I'd also be calling the landlord, and maybe a priest.
There wasn't a clear line between the workplace and his living quarters. He pretty much lived...
But do you think anyone ever pitched, what if we moved the company to literally anywhere with walls and dignity? Well, neighbors did it. They repeatedly told lively siblings that this place is unfit for a professional setting. But the egotistic siblings didn't care about it.
The use of Eric's loft as an all-hours business irked neighbors too, so they got complaints from a neighbor.
The marijuana complaints weren't just whispers. They were a cloud. A whole building choked on the pungent scent of Eric's creative process. Residents weren't just annoyed. They were furious. Can you blame them? I've lived next to a drum-playing toddler before, and even that felt more professionally structured than what Preserve was offering. Foot traffic flooded the halls. Strangers entered and exited at all hours, all contributing to the sense that this was less a business and more a badly written reality show called Startup, The Implosion.
And one of the neighbors was a former NHL player, Sean Avery.
Here, the question is, where was Blake Lively? What was she doing when her brother was making the lives of his employees and neighbors a hell?
So Blake Lively wasn't there a lot. I think some of them didn't even meet with Blake Lively. She was just running this and trusting her brother to take.
Of course, this train wreck wasn't happening in a vacuum. According to former employees, Blake Lively knew about the mess. In fact, she's accused of actively covering it up. Rather than holding her brother accountable, she reportedly brushed off complaints and carried on posting dreamy filtered photos about conscious living. Because nothing says sustainability like emotionally burning out your entire team while your brother hotboxes the office and emotionally terrorizes your staff. Staff members told the world that Blake was absent from every venture of her startup, leaving it totally on her clueless brother. They told the insiders that photo shoots meant to be curated by Blake were reportedly minimal in her actual involvement. One described her arriving late and only adding accessories like bracelets to the looks, yet she publicly took credit for styling them. In reality, poor staff members were doing the work, and she, along with her brother, was taking full credit for everything.
Came out of her house hours late looking an absolute mess. The whole idea was to show that she was styling the shoots. All she was doing was adding accessories like bracelets.
In the spring of 2015, a group of exhausted, unpaid, and deeply frustrated staff tried to hold an intervention-style meeting with Blake in New York City. Their mission was to finally get her attention about her brother Eric's wildly inappropriate behavior. But instead of showing even an ounce of empathy, Blake allegedly dismissed the entire thing like someone had just asked her to switch to drugstore shampoo.
Concerns to Blake and said we need to have a meeting and talk about what's going on at Preserve because things are falling apart. And Blake did not want to hear anything about her brother, and she was like, oh.
But I guess in the Preserve universe, family comes first. Even when that family is actively tanking your business with a vape pen in one hand and a panic attack in the other. I laugh when I imagine that meeting. Probably a carefully lit room with reclaimed wood tables, hand-stitched notebooks, and Blake sitting like a modern-day queen of aesthetic minimalism, only to slam the door shut the second things got real. Staff say she flat-out refused to entertain any critique of Eric, who, let's not forget, was treating the office like his personal man cave. They were begging for help, describing a toxic, unprofessional circus, and she allegedly shut it all down. It's giving don't kill my vibe, but makes it corporate negligence.
She's entitled and extremely out of touch and really only cares about herself.
From what I gather, Blake wasn't just aloof, she was entitled. Employees described her as disconnected from the actual day-to-day suffering of the people she employed. While staff were literally sitting on the floor to work and begging to be paid, she was reportedly more worried about how the brand looked on Instagram than how it actually functioned. I believe that kind of denial takes real talent, like Oscar nomination-level delusion. Because if your company is crumbling from within, but you're still focused on lighting candles just right for a product photo, then you're not a founder, you're a fantasy director. Here, you all must have a question in your mind. Why did the Preserve employees never take any legal action against Eric and Blake? Well, the answer paints a really grim picture of the Lively siblings. Blake Lively's publicist, Leslie Sloan, is the real hero here, who sweeps every complaint and office mismanagement under a $300,000 Persian rug.
Where he allegedly drank alcohol, smoked pot, and left staff outside in the New York cold, shivering, waiting for work while he's laying in bed, smoking some.
According to multiple sources, Sloan practically turned media suppression into an Olympic sport. Every red flag was buried, every complaint was dismissed, every desperate ex-employee was served with an NDA faster than you can say organic, artisanal failure. Some insiders say the total hush money payout ballooned up to $300,000. I guess when you can't lead a company, you can always afford to legally erase it.
But I am scared of Leslie Sloan. I do not want her against me. One staffer said that Leslie Sloan shut down the story. They buried every single thing from that company.
But hey, nothing says empowered female CEO like throwing hush money at the wreckage you personally ignored, right? Here's the part that really sends me. After being shut down, silenced, and, in some cases, let go, multiple employees were reportedly handed NDAs and shown the door.
Of course, to sign an NDA so they couldn't talk about any of this stuff, at least 3 employees reportedly filed legal.
As if to say, thanks for your suffering, now kindly shut up about it forever. Some decided to pursue legal action because they were tired of being treated like disposable background characters in the Lively brand story. And honestly, I respect that, because nothing screams authentic lifestyle brand like binding legal documents and quiet hush money. Leslie Sloan reportedly played gatekeeper to the truth, ensuring every unflattering leak was sealed tight. No one in the media heard about the emotional trauma, the bizarre office conditions, the mistreatment, or the fact that 3 of 8 employees allegedly threatened legal action.
And you had 3 employees filing legal complaints afterwards after they were all let go and fired.
Yes. 37.5% of employees wanted Blake and Eric behind bars for giving them trauma and wasting their 1 year of professional life. That's a full-blown blackout.
3 out of 8 employees filed legal claims against Blake Lively.
I laugh when I think about how this entire circus stayed off the radar until now. Who knew a burlap-draped lifestyle blog could come with CIA-level secrecy? By the way, what urged these employees to speak up now? Well, it seemed like Lively's toxic workplace lawsuit angered her former employees.
As she's out there making all these complaints about what an unsafe workplace it ends with us was, which, for the record, I've spoken to dozens of crew members,
Blake Lively, fresh from the ruins of Preserve, has now taken a bold step into courtroom territory, suing actor Justin Baldoni over alleged workplace misconduct. And while one might expect a woman with such a checkered leadership past to proceed with caution, Blake appears to be diving in headfirst, because nothing screams credible like filing a lawsuit about someone else's workplace behavior while your own staff once sat cross-legged on the floor, unpaid, surrounded by marijuana smoke and emotional breakdowns.
because if we're going to hold people accountable, right, if we're going to be man enough, Ryan, if we're going to be man enough, can we call out?
But really, how bad could Justin's eye contact be compared to your brother running a brand launch from his mattress? The irony here isn't subtle, it's practically scripted.
One staffer said, "The workplace allegations that Blake are making now are deeply ironic, given that it was one of the most insane, toxic, and emotionally draining and disorganized environments."
While Blake's case against Baldoni reportedly centers around boundary issues and inappropriate interactions on set, former Preserve employees are still haunted by their time in her chaotic brand hellscape. I laugh when I imagine Blake delivering a legal statement about emotional safety, while her brother was allegedly hosting fashion shoots 5 feet from his bed and flirting with the employees, even being married.
Furniture, 43-year-old Eric, who got married in 2005, even had an affair with one of the employees.
But sure, tell us again how your concern for workplace ethics comes from a place of experience. Oh, it definitely does. Just the wrong kind. Former employees are reportedly stunned by Blake's sudden moral high ground, calling it opportunistic and hypocritical.
A former employee said it's kind of ironic that she's suing Justin Baldoni over toxic work environment when you read what these employers had to go through.
They are fearlessly calling her out, telling the world their side of the story, and I believe they're right to feel that way. It's one thing to grow, apologize, and own your mistakes. But it's something else entirely to pretend they never happened and then pivot into the role of accountability queen as if you didn't once silence your own staff with legal paperwork while enabling your brother's stoner dictatorship.
Bad for her. Can you imagine in court if Brian Friedman brings this up? You know, what kind of boss she was. She's suing her boss.
The leaked stories of Preserve amidst Baldoni's lawsuit are taking a toll on Blake's nerves, as Brian Friedman could use her employees against her in court. In the world of social media, she is getting backlash for her ironic claims about others' workspaces, and it is believed that she would be getting extreme backlash in the court, too, that would impact the quality of her claims about Justin Baldoni. I think if celebrities want to hold others accountable for their workplace behavior, they should at least start by sweeping up the mess under their own branded doormats. Otherwise, it's just another case of performative morality wrapped in designer hypocrisy. What are your thoughts about it? Do share with us in the comments section.